All right, guys, welcome back to the Film Grinders podcast. I'm Nicholas Hauka here with David Hollinshead, rocking a new look. He's got the goatee and the kind of mohawk, kind of mullet in the back there. It's coming in for his role in his new show he's in. Dave, is this 1980?
It's the 1980s in a small town called Beaumont, where dancing is illegal. Come out and see it. We're running for another 2 weeks.
Well, dancing might be illegal there, but doing mock drafts is not. So here we are. We're going to do our first mock draft after free agency. First week is over. All the big moves have really been made. Now it's just depth guys being signed. So teams have kind of started to solidify their rosters and take shape. So we can make a better guess now. So let's get going here. How we're going to do this. I'm going to pick all the odd number draft picks while Dave takes all the even picks. That way he gets to pick his Patriots. I get to pick my Jaguars. Works out perfectly. Let's just get into it. So we'll start with pick number 1. Tennessee. An interesting move at left tackle in free agency, to say the least. I think the best thing you can say about Broderick Jones is that he's young. This is a team that obviously does not have the quarterback position figured out. I think it's very apparent Will Levis is not the answer there. He had a terrible season. He would make a throw or two a game where you go, what are you looking at? I don't understand.
Not just what are you looking at, what are you doing?
Well, I like having your coach ream you out like you're a high school or college player in the pro games in this time in the NFL. Pretty rare, so you have to do stuff pretty bad. Now, again, like you don't have the edge position isn't filled. And if you think about this draft, really kind of the generational prospect in this draft, there's 2 of them really, and that's Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. So this is such a difficult predicament to be in because, in my opinion, Cam Ward, I think he's going to be a superstar in this league, and he's right there for you at number 1. I think realistically, this might be a place where the Titans trade down. But we're not doing trade downs in this. We're not doing that. We're just picking. So if I'm in their position right now, I'm going to take Cam Ward because this is a guy who I think is going to be a star. And I think if you pass up on this guy, you are going to be kicking yourself for the next 10 to 15 years. So this for me, this has to be Cam Ward for them. I'd be okay with Abdul Carter, obviously, or even Travis Hunter, but you cannot go into next year with Will Levis as your quarterback after spending all that money on your defense, not this offseason, but the past offseason. And this is just the pick that makes sense to be the most.
Yeah, and you're hopefully not picking number 1 overall all that often, or you're going to have a very short career as a head coach. And as an offensive head coach, you need your quarterback, right? And head coaches typically like to bring in their own guy. You're higher on Ward than I am. You think he's going to be a superstar. I think the jury's still out. But with the quarterback room in Tennessee being what it is, I think Cam Ward's the right choice, yeah. The Cleveland Browns, I think they were probably eyeing Cam Ward. Shadur Sanders is, of course, on the board as well. But I'm going to go with the best player in the draft, I feel. And I think you go Abdul Carter. Yes, they re-signed Myles Garrett. Yes, they brought in Joe Tryon-Shoyinka to play opposite him. But I think you just need to get talent on this team. Kevin Stefanski is coaching for his life. I think he could have easily been fired just this season, but they're deciding to give him another chance. And maybe Deshaun Watson turns it around. Maybe Kenny Pickett, Kenny Pickett to be the backup, compete for that number 1 spot. Maybe he shows you something that was worthy of being a first-round pick. But you just got to bring talent on this team. I think Abdul Carter's the pick here.
Yeah, I don't think there's a chance Deshaun plays this year with the Achilles being re-injured again. They spread everything out, put the ball in Deshaun Watson's hands, and it failed miserably before he got hurt. He looked dreadful. He's not the same player. What a terrible deal by the Browns. I know that has been talked about ad nauseum. Letting go of Baker Mayfield, who is playing very well for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and bringing Deshaun in with all the off-field stuff. and just really struggling to play the game at a high level. Probably one of the worst moves in NFL history, but yeah, having Abdul Carter and Myles Garrett off the edge, wow. Like, this is all of a sudden you're talking about one of the best D lines in the whole NFL just with those two, right? Carter's a generational prospect, can't miss. I like that move there. I like not reaching on Shedeur at this point. I think for them, where they are, they're not in any place to contend anytime soon, even if you bring in Shedeur. I think this is a really good move for them. Moving on to a team that is really not in a place to contend anytime soon. The New York Giants. There's rumblings about Aaron Rodgers maybe coming in to play quarterback. And if that happens, maybe this pick looks different. But this is a team who has only Tommy DeVito as we record this today, right now. You can't go in. He cannot be a starter. He's a backup at best. We've seen when he comes in, he has not really played very well for them. I think you have to go quarterback, especially because of the situation Brian Dable's in. He's essentially been told, according to reports, it's this year or you're done, right? Which puts them in a terrible position because it's him and the general manager in the front office there. They know they need to win now, and they're not going to be able to do it with DeVito or some quarterback off the street at this point. So I think you need to go Shedeur here. And I don't love doing that by any means. I do think Shedeur will be ready to go day one for them. I don't think his ceiling is very high, but I think he will be able to give you productive quarterback play from day one. Would you agree with that, Dave?
Yeah, I'd completely agree. And I think that when it comes down to this is a make or break year, I think it's a make or break 8 games before
Yeah.
Dable gets the boot. And with Shedeur Sanders, he at the very least raises the floor a little bit. You have an okay offensive line, I guess. You have great receivers, Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson. You just brought back Slayton. They can probably elevate the quarterback play there for you. You just need a guy who's competent enough to get them the ball. And I think at the very least, that's what Shedeur Sanders is.
Yeah, make or break. Not a good position to put your organization in. I would make the argument if you're at this point with a coaching staff and regime up top, probably just get rid of them. I don't know. Like, just this seems like you're just setting your franchise back another year, right?
Yeah, I'd agree. You're kind of kicking the can down the road and putting it on life support when you really, if you're saying that, you really don't have much faith in them, right? There's not much confidence going towards Dable, a former Coach of the Year winner. But if anyone can take a QB and turn him into anything, it'd be Brian Dable. I mean, we've seen him do it with Josh Allen. Shedeur Sanders is obviously not the physical specimen that Josh Allen is, but he's at least something competent. You hope that can come in and save your job.
Yeah. Well, speaking of turnarounds, the Patriots have had quite the offseason, Dave. Lots of free agent signings. Mike Vrabel, Patriots linebacker, in charge, trying to kind of get back to the Belichickian ways almost. And where do you think they're going here with number 4?
See, I love the majority. I won't say everything. I love the majority of what the Patriots have done this offseason. They've really bolstered up their defense with a lot of free agent signings. But what you're seeing is that no offensive player wants to come to New England. They've thrown money at Chris Godwin. I believe the reports where they offered him 20 million more. I don't know how true that is, but the reports are that they offered Chris Godwin 20 million more than what Tampa Bay was going to pay him, and he still goes back to Tampa Bay. You couldn't pry Ayuk out because Ayuk doesn't want to come here. Obviously, last year, Calvin Ridley turned down your money as well. Here, I'm going to go Travis Hunter. And I know it says cornerback there, and I know he's a great corner, but I think he's going to primarily play offense for you. You need to get some sort of playmaking talent on the offensive side of the ball. Vrabel has said that with receivers, top-end receivers, they don't usually end up hitting free agency. You either have to trade for them or draft them and develop them yourself. And looking at the board, you think you just go the best player that fits. And I think Travis Hunter is the guy.
Yeah, I like that decision. I know you're super high on him as a receiver, and I think he will be a star to superstar as a receiver. He's so explosive, great ball skills. The other thing with him is because he's playing both positions so much, you don't really get that time to really refine your skill set, right? Once he really hones in on what position he's going to play, whether that be corner, which I would personally prefer him to play. But if New England takes him, you just brought in Carlton Davis and you already have Christian Gonzalez. You don't really need him to play corner for you. So yeah, I can see him primarily being a receiver. And once he gets time to hone in to his craft as a route runner, he's already so explosive as an athlete. He's just gonna get better. And Drake May needs options to throw the ball to. Like, you don't want Kendrick Bourne to be your number one, very likely, right? So this makes so much sense. I think this is a good pick for them. And Drake May now has a number one target to throw to.
Yeah, I mean, we saw kind of down the stretch he developed some good chemistry with Kayshon Boutte, but you want to put all your eggs in that basket. As we already said, you don't want Kendrick Bourne being your number one guy. Yes, he did well under the Josh McDaniels system, however many years ago, 3 years ago, I believe. And then after that, Pop Douglas, he's not a big volume kind of guy. He's a gadgety, scheme up touches kind of guy. And McDaniels has struggled in his history of finding good ways to use these guys. As much as I love Josh McDaniels, he's just a guy that you can have Drake May throw to. And if that's the floor, I'm okay with that. Let's just bring in some offensive talent. And maybe it doesn't work out and you have to move him back to corner. Oh, shucks. You still have a top 15, top 10 corner, hopefully, down the road.
Yeah, I think if he plays corner, he's going to be a top 5 corner in the league at some point. He just needs to refine his skill set a little bit. But
yeah,
we'll go more into that in a different episode. For now, the Jaguars, my Jaguars, are on the clock. What a coincidence that our teams are picking right after each other, hey?
Oh, so good. We're in such a good place. Our fandoms are feeling good.
Well, I think the difference here is that you guys had like 20 years of success, while the Jaguars have had a couple seasons here and there of being in AFC Championship games. So I'm
Hey,
going
don't
to be
undermine my
honest.
trauma. Things have been very difficult for us just recently.
Yeah, I don't feel bad for you, and I don't think the rest of the NFL world does either. Moving on to the Jaguars, this is going to be a boring pick for me. This is a pick that everyone kind of makes because it's a chalk pick. It makes sense for them. I'm going to go Mason Graham here from Michigan. What Mason Graham brings to this team is so important. Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker are so good off the edge for this team, but last year the defensive tackle play was just flat out not good enough for this team. The play in general was flat out not good enough for this team, but especially on the interior, they like quarterbacks just easily stepped up in the pocket to deliver the ball, even when Trayvon and Josh delivered pressure because there was no push in the middle. And you need that. And they couldn't stop the run. And they were just bad up front in every way other than those two. This is a huge pick for them. This is now Mason Graham, in and out of himself, is a great player. This guy reminds me of Justin Smith, just farm boy strong, just not like your explosive rusher, but just wins with power, just has a knack to get to the quarterback, gets double teamed and doesn't get moved. This guy's just so strong, so powerful. He, in and out of himself, is a good player. And he's going to elevate your two superstar pass rushers. This is a just can't miss pick for the Jags. I really like what James Gladstone has done for this team so far. Everything has logically made sense. You might not agree with what he does personally, but there is some point of reason there. And I think he continues that with his first draft pick. And it's really a nice breath of fresh air after the Balaki regime.
Yeah, and there's a reason it's a chalk pick and a boring pick, and maybe the pick fatigue is kind of fitting in. But there's a reason why it's chalk, right? Is because it does fit, it does make a lot of sense. And here at the Film Grinders podcast, we don't want to be contrarians just for contrarian's sake. I think it's the right pick. Everyone's picking it. It's just the right way to go.
Agreed. If it don't make dollars, don't make sense, Tyga. Mason Graham is going to make lots of dollars and win you games. So makes sense to me.
Yeah. Moving on to the Vegas Raiders. I'm going to go Ashton Genty, running back out of Boise State. They're in a bit of a transitional period. They're in their third head coach in just as many years. We know Pete Carroll likes to run the ball. His success in Seattle came behind a stud running back in Marshawn Lynch. Chip Kelly also likes to have some versatility and explosiveness in the run game. I think Genty just fits. You got to raise both the floor and the ceiling for this team. You brought in Geno Smith. I think that was a good move to raise the floor of the team. Maybe gets you another 1 or 2 wins. But I think Genty's the kind of player who raises both the ceiling and the floor of your offense, which is kind of what you want. And Vegas is kind of a market where they want something explosive and fun to watch, right? And I think Genty's the right pick.
Yeah, I'd agree. Now you have a great weapon next to Brock Bowers to make Geno Smith's life a lot easier. This is a team that they just signed Max Crosby. Pete Carroll comes in as a 70-year-old head coach. This is win now mode for them. It's quite obvious. You can say what you want about that, but this is a pick that really goes after that mentality, which they have right now. So, despite if you agree or not if they're a contender, I know our buddy Jake Hall would like this pick as well. So, you've made him happy with that one. I think when you bring in a veteran quarterback like that, again, make his life easy as possible. This does that. This is a good selection, and this guy might be electrifying Las Vegas crowds for quite a while here. We move on to the New York Jets. What a disaster last season was for them. The Robert Saleh
Last
firing.
20 seasons.
I'm not trying to pile on too much, Dave. As
Fair.
a Jags fan, I understand the hurt there. I really do. They haven't really been relevant since Rex Ryan was at the helm. So, this is a team that needs a bunch of stuff. Justin Fields comes in. At least they're not in the position the Giants are in, where Tommy DeVito's their only quarterback. Justin Fields can give you average to slightly below average starting quarterback play. I really want him to figure things out. I think he has the tools. I hope this is the situation where it finally all clicks for him. I really hope that. If you can get Garrett Wilson to stay, I know there's been rumblings of, even despite Rodgers leaving, him still not wanting to be there. If you get this guy to stay, he's a really good weapon. This guy's going to be a top 10 receiver in the league. He's so talented. He hated his life last year, reportedly. This year, hopefully things kind of turn around with this new regime.
He came out and he said he's very excited that Fields is back. So I think that probably bought you a little
exactly.
more morale and a little more staying with him.
Those two had great chemistry in college, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially on those deep shots, on those deep overs and deep post routes off of under center play action. There's definitely a chemistry there. Maybe this is what Fields needs, right? So, and again, as you said, if this buys you more time with Garrett Wilson, that's a great thing. So I think what they need is they need a little bit of time for Justin Fields. So I think the pick here's an offensive tackle that's kind of been shooting up the boards a little bit. I think this is an Armand Membu pick right here. They need a right tackle. They had Fashanu from Penn State playing left tackle, who was okay last year, and I think he's really going to start to come into his own here in year 2. I really think he's a good prospect. Now you solidify both the tackle spots. Your guard and center situation is pretty solid in New York, actually, for the most part. That's one thing they had going for them. This gives Fields time to find Garrett Wilson downfield. I think this is a really good fit for them at number 7.
Yep, couldn't agree more. Morgan Moses goes to New England. Thank goodness. You need to solidify that offensive line. You got great running back. You have a QB still trying to put it together. I think you just do everything you possibly can to make that work for him, right?
Yeah. And Membu really had flashes of dominance. There was the game against Shamar Stewart last year when he was playing for Missouri, where Stewart was dominated by Membu. And Stewart's a legit NFL talent. Like, I think this guy has a lot of upside, and he could do nothing against Membu. Membu has long arms. He gets them on edge defenders and really punishes them in the run game. He could be a little more mean and a little more nasty, and I think that'll come with time, but he has all the tools to be a successful tackle. I really like what he does in both phases of the game. So good pick here.
Hey, moving on to the Carolina Panthers. Another team that's kind of in a no man's land. You're not really sure how they're going to come back this year. The jury's still out on Bryce Young if he's really the guy. But I think you just got to go with one of the more talented players on the board here. And I'm going to go Shamar Stewart, edge out of Texas A&M. Now, you look at the production from him in college, and you think this guy didn't contribute in college or have the production in college. How's he going to produce in the NFL? He wasn't asked to be this downfield disruptor at Texas A&M. He was basically asked to contain the edge, hold the tackles, and he did a great job doing that. He's dropped a lot of weight in the combine. I think he can play at either weights. I'm not too worried about that. And if you ask, and we're seeing a lot of comps come out of him between him and Myles Garrett with the way he tested. I think he makes the Trayvon Walker kind of jump where he comes to the pros, is asked to be more of a disruptor, and he's got the tools to do it. I think Shamar Stewart just raises your defense's ceiling, probably floor as well. I'm going to say that a lot, unfortunately. But I think Shamar Stewart is just the right pick here for him. You just got to add talent to your roster.
Yeah, I think with where the edge class is right now, I would agree. I would definitely take Mike Green over Shamar Stewart, but with what's going on with him off the field, I think this makes the most sense there. To me, watching Shamar's tape, he is really explosive out of a 2-point stance. And when he was actually asked to get after the passer, which was far and few between, but when he did, he showed a lot of flashes there. I agree with you. There's a lot of upside there. He's shed weight now too, so he's going to be more explosive if he can hold the power that he has too. This guy could be a problem at the next level. So I really like this pick here. I think it's a really good fit for Carolina. This is a team that, with Dave Canales as their head coach, I thought he did a really good job with the talent they had and just adding talent to this room. Bryce Young starting to kind of figure it out now. I know you said jury's still out. I really thought he looked like a different player at the last 5 to 6 games of the year. So hopefully that continues for them. And this pick will help solidify their defense and maybe get them back to being a successful franchise again that we saw in the 2010s. Moving on to their division rival, the New Orleans Saints. Team in cap hell just signed Chase Young to a massive, well, not massive deal, but a pretty big deal for what Chase Young is. This is a team that I think they're really needing a full rebuild, and they're just not doing it. They keep manipulating the cap and putting off all the debt they have. This is just a best player available with kind of how their roster is looking right now. And I just think this is Tyler Warren. You can make the argument, a tight end in the top 15. I think this guy is really a generational prospect at tight end. He has great length and power. He loves blocking. I don't know, Dave, if you heard him talk at the combine. His favorite thing is blocking in the run game. He loves getting after it, and you could just see his face light up. It was so funny listening to him talk about it. And he's just such a competitor. Penn State was kind of pretty vanilla on offense, and they would do things to try to get him the ball, like playing some wildcat quarterback and stuff like that. Like, this guy's just the ultimate competitor. Really love his game. I think this is a really good pick. And with Derek Carr as your quarterback, he really likes to work in that short to intermediate portion of the field. I think Warren is really great in that aspect, and this is a really good fit to kind of help Derek Carr to propel his game a little bit, because the reality is he's your guy for the ongoing future here. So I think this is a really good pick for them.
Yeah, unless Spencer Rattler all of a sudden comes out of the gate and beat Carr out of his job. I don't think picking a tight end in the top 10 is all that shocking anymore. I mean, we saw what Brock Bowers did last year, and people were kind of juggled between, yes, he's this explosive, crazy offensive weapon, but he plays tight end. I don't think Vegas is second guessing that pick at all. And I think if Gronkowski, however many years ago, didn't have the back issues and you knew what he was going to become, you wouldn't turn up your nose to that either. Now, I'm obviously not trying to compare Tyler Warren to the greatest tight end of all time, but you've seen tight ends come out very recently, and if they're worthy of a pick and you know that they're going to help your offense, pick them.
Yeah.
Like, we see tackles go high. We see wide receivers go high. We're seeing running back. We had a running back go at 6. If a guy can come in and elevate your offense and be a playmaker and contribute in the run game, why not pick him, right? It just makes sense.
And I think Kellen Moore will really know how to utilize him well. This is a guy
Oh,
that
totally.
played in a multiple um, kind of shifting power run offense at Boise State where he was so successful. This is a guy that knows how to use tight ends. So I think
Yeah, I
this
don't
is
think
going to.
Dallas Goddard was crying about his role in Philadelphia at all.
No.
No.
We've seen it. I think, yeah, this is a good fit for them. Now, moving on to the Chicago Bears, a team, Dave, that has done a lot to solidify their offensive line and protect Caleb Williams moving forward. What do they do here? Do they further increase their offensive line performance? Do you find a weapon for Caleb? Do you go defense? What do you think here?
I think they keep plugging away at their offensive line. They get a bit of a guy who's falling down the board due to his measurables, but I think Will Campbell's the pick here. And let me tell you why. At worst, I think he's competing to start over Braxton Jones at left tackle. You brought in Joe Tooney. Yes, you traded for Jonah Jackson. Joe Tooney's probably just a 1 year rental player. That's probably all you're getting out of him. Jonah Jackson has struggled to stay on the field. He gets hurt every second game and has some inconsistencies with that. So I think if at best you have a starting left tackle moving forward, and if at worst you have one of the best guards in the league moving forward, you're not going to complain. Ben Johnson and his offense in Detroit made their money on having a dominant offensive line. And I think we're going to continue to plug that. And with the value on the board right now, I think Campbell is the pick for the Chicago Bears.
And if you listen to a lot of analysts and offensive line specialists talk about him, they're not as concerned as other people about the reach and the wingspan that he has because it doesn't show up on tape as being an issue. I think with guys in the past, it has. I think with Jonah Williams, that's a really good example of a guy that was really solid in college, but there were a lot of scouts that look, it shows up on tape that against certain rushers, this is an issue. Not really a reality with Campbell from what I've heard. So I feel like this guy can probably play tackle. But as you said, if he can't, guess what? He's a dominant guard. So you're getting like a really good player here at number 10.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And we keep seeing the wingspan for tackles just keep getting reset. Like it used to be 33 and a half inches. And then Rashawn Slater comes out with 33 and everyone's panicking about his reach. Rashawn Slater's been fine. And yes, 32 and 5/8. We're really talking that much, right? And yes, we're just getting further and further from what the standard used to be. But if the guy can play football, the guy can play football. And he is definitely a guy who can play football and loves doing it.
I want winners. You play to win the game, and you
don't
do
play
that.
to just play.
And you know how you win games, Dave? You pick good players in the first round and you make draft picks that make sense. The San Francisco 49ers will be looking to do that. This is a team, their window's over, right? Like they're almost in rebuild mode right now, looking at their roster and all the players they've lost. There's needs here kind of everywhere for them, honestly. Like there's needs on the edge opposite Nick Bosa. You lose Leonard Floyd. Now Drake Jackson is kind of the incumbent there on the edge. Your receiving core, Brandon Ayuk wants out of town. Trent Williams at left tackle is very old. He's still a really good player. Your secondary could use a little help here. This is just a best player available to me. And with that, I'm going to take Jahdae Barron for them. A very versatile defensive back. I don't see him playing outside corner in the NFL. I think he's capable, but I think he would only be like good there. I think he's going to be an excellent nickel defender or safety for that matter. And he's just a chess piece for defensive coordinators to use. This guy can play all over the field in the secondary. What a valuable piece to have. And I think just excellent value at 11 for this team that's just looking for best player available. You just lost Hufanga to the Broncos in free agency. This will suit this will kind of suit what their roster is right now. It's time to rebuild. Best player available. John Lynch was a safety. He knows safety. I'm sure he sees Jahdae Barron as one, if not a nickel defender, and I think he knows the value that he'll bring to a defense.
Yeah, Barron's really shot up the boards recently. I mean, I remember when I started my kind of draft prep maybe a month ago, maybe longer, that he was probably a second round type corner. And he's really shot up, and I understand why. He can kind of play anywhere on defense, and with a team that's bereft of talent on that side of the ball, it's you got to just pick talent. And Jahdae Barron, he's it, right? Moving on to the Dallas Cowboys. This is a really tough pick. In theory, they're better than to be picking 12 on paper, but they're not, and they seem to keep underachieving. I love what DeMarcus Lawrence just came out and said and got into beef with Micah Parsons. Saying,
that was so funny.
But is he wrong?
No, he's not. Like, this is a team that signs big names from 5 years ago and expects them to play at that level, and they clearly can't. And it just seems like a repeat process the last like 5 years. I just don't understand where they're coming from. I don't. Their direction seems very lost right now to me.
I'd agree. So this is a interesting pick for them. I'm actually going to go Tet McMillan here and stop the fall for Tet McMillan. Yes, you have CeeDee Lamb, but you've never had that. You haven't had that Robin to the Batman since Amari Cooper, and you've kind of been chasing that for the past couple of years. I mean, you traded for Jonathan Mingo. He's never going to be the guy. You hope when you trade for him that he might be a flyer that can put it together. Not so much. Jalen Tolbert, he's fine. He's fine as a number 3 option, I guess. But when he's number 2, he just isn't. He just isn't it, right? And I think Tet McMillan is the perfect Robin to a Batman. He's very much like T. Higgins. Nobody really wants to be their wide receiver 1. But if you have that dictating coverage receiver ahead of him, which CeeDee Lamb is, that's when Tet can eat against the second QB. Coverage kind of drawn away from him. You can line him up in different positions. Yes, he's great on the X and the outside, but you also see him line up as a big slot. And I think it's Schottenheimer, right? I'm not crazy about that.
Yes, it is Schottenheimer.
Yeah. I think Schottenheimer can find a way to use them. And you just giving Dak some weapons. You need to start winning games. I think Tet McMillan is a good fall for them and a good value for them there.
Well, we'll see if they make the logical decision. Lately, they have not been doing so. It's been tough for America's team's fans. So on to Miami. Miami has a need at guard, possibly right tackle. Depends on what you think of Austin Jackson. This team needs to be able to protect Tua. This is a guy with serious concussion issues. Say what you will about if he is the guy or not. A lot of people say no. He's still so much better than probably what 15 teams have at quarterback right now.
And you got Zach Wilson, just the perfect backup. Honestly, he could probably start day 1
now. There's not a quarterback that I think is able to go at 13 here. This is not where the Dolphins go. There's also a need at corner. I know Cam Smith had a really good rookie year, but before he got hurt in 2024, he really struggled. I really like Cam Smith, but NFL is a what have you done for me lately? And after playing like that before you got hurt, and with this guy still on the board somehow at 13, I think you have to go Will Johnson to play opposite Jalen Ramsey. This is a guy who his stock is dropping a little bit because he's not testing at the combine and all of this stuff. This guy is a can't miss. He's going to be a generational corner in this league. I would be shocked if he drops this far. I think he might, from what we're hearing with everything. This is the next version of Darius Slay. This guy is such a savant in off coverage. He reads routes so quickly in zone coverages and match coverages. He's always in the right spot. He's so smooth as an athlete in his pedal. He has good ball skills. I think he had 9 career interceptions at Michigan. 3 of them are pick sixes. This guy is so good. I watch this guy and he's a teach tape corner. Everything is so smooth, so technically sound, and he is a really good athlete. I know he's not testing because of his injury. This is a can't miss. Now you have Jalen Ramsey. I know he's aging a little bit, but now you have Jalen Ramsey and Will Johnson at 1 and 2 as your corners. This now Miami secondary is looking pretty damn good.
Yeah, couldn't agree with that more. And with the way that Miami has struggled to play against playoff teams, you need to be better on defense. And these good playoff teams have a 1-2 receiver combo, and you got to be able to shut that stuff down. I don't hate it at all. I think that's good value for the pick. I like Will Johnson a lot. Moving on to the Indianapolis Colts, there's a lot of directions this could go. I'm torn between a couple players here.
This is a team that's had a really good free agency period, in my opinion. I think they've been very proactive. I think they've gone out, gotten good players, and not spent an egregious amount of money. Like, it's free agency, you're going to overpay a little bit, but I haven't seen any contracts that I go, wow, that is awful. I think this is a team that's doing things right. Who do you think they go here?
I'm going to go Colston Loveland. And
Okay.
yes, that might be a reach down the board. And yes, it's not really a position of value, but as we just said, tight ends are going higher and higher, and I don't see why not. You're giving Anthony Richardson every opportunity this year to prove that he can be the number one guy. I'm not a big Anthony Richardson fan. I think my hot take as of today is that Daniel Jones will end the season as the starting QB for the Colts, but you do whatever you can, give the tools to Richardson to put it together, right? Colston Loveland's a great receiver. He can make plays at any level of the field from the tight end position. He's not a terrible run blocker. You can't be in Michigan, like you just can't. Jim Harbaugh wouldn't recruit you if you weren't. You just got to do what you can to make that offense go and be a little less sporadic and a little more put together, a little more structure to it. I think Loveland's a good pick for that.
Yeah, at worst, he's just a mismatch problem in the slot, right? Talk about the blocking. Yeah, he's not the best blocker in the world. I think from what I've heard, he's a willing blocker, but he's just not like overly powerful. But this guy's a mismatch in the slot. He's your typical, and this is cliche, and you always hear it. He's too strong for DBs. He's too fast for linebackers, even with the adapting game with how versatile backers are. Guy's a matchup problem, and I really like his tape. He had really poor quarterback play this year at Michigan and still had a really solid year and was able to contribute. This is an excellent player, and now you're giving Anthony Richardson all the chances in the world. Richardson's another guy who I was higher on than most. I like his game. I think before he got hurt in his rookie year, I really liked what he was doing with Steichen. Obviously, in year 2, it did not look the same, and he really struggled quite a bit. This is a guy that I think has the tools. There are some kind of maturity things with him, which he owned up to right away. I really like that. I think when you're making all this money and everything is kind of going your way, and the fact that you're an NFL player making millions of dollars, it's really easy to ignore those things. And I think he's done a good job of owning up to his mistakes and trying to get better, and his teammates have acknowledged it. Maybe he puts it together, and Loveland would really, really help him in that aspect, having a target like that. Now we go to Atlanta, who also has a young quarterback at the helm now. With Michael Penix, who I really like. I think he's going to be I think he's a top 10 guy in the league eventually. I don't know how you feel about Penix, but some of those throws he made last year were big boy throws. I know he was a little bit of an older rookie. This is a sneaky team for me. This could be like the Washington of this year. I know they performed a lot better than Washington did the year before that, but this is a team that could be sneaky and make a little bit of a run. What they are lacking is an edge rusher. They're pretty good in the middle, and they have a couple of really versatile defenders in Raheem Morris's defensive scheme, which is really good. They love using that 5-man line to create picks and mismatches. I think for me here, I think if there wasn't stuff going on, Mike Green makes so much sense here. Mikael Williams is another guy really shooting up boards. I like Mikael Williams. I know he played hurt all year, but I'm going to go a little bit off the board here. I'm going to go Jalen Walker. I like the speed and explosiveness he has. I think he's a really good edge rusher as well. I think he's kind of that hybrid guy where at Georgia, he played a lot of off-ball backer. On passing downs, he would rush off the edge. He brings you that versatility that's really needed in the defensive game nowadays. And he's a homegrown product. I don't know how much that actually matters, but I just really like the fit here. Explosive athlete. This guy's going to be a really good player. And here's the thing. If he doesn't work out on the edge on early rundowns, he can play off the ball. He can be a versatile player for you. And then on pass downs, he can just get after it. He's a great speed rusher. I think he needs a little more of a rush plan. But once he puts that together, this guy's going to be a really disruptive force off the edge. So I like this fit for the Falcons.
Yeah, that was going to be my pick for them too. If you were watching my screen as you made that pick, I was just nodding like very, very happily.
Yeah.
The whole Matthew Judon experiment didn't really work out for them. They're not ones with their history to be that just take true edge players. So as much as I like Michael Williams to them, I just, based off of history, I just don't see them going there. I think Jalen Walker's great for all the reasons you said. Can play off the edge, can play in the middle, move him around. He's your little chess piece on defense. I love the pick, and I always love the storylines of someone playing in-house, in-state, and going to that NFL team too. So I'm 100% on board with the Jalen Walker pick. Moving to the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona is another team that we kind of talked about this past season as being a team that's going to be very well coached.
Yep.
And they were, but they just don't have enough talent to get themselves over the edge. They brought in Josh Sweat, and that's a great start. They haven't really had that dominant edge rusher since they had J.J. Watt around. So I think bringing in Josh Sweat, you have Baron Branning as well. Those are two great edge rushers. I don't like their secondary. I don't mind it, but I think they could use an upgrade there. I think you are still wanting to build around Kyler Murray. So that puts me in kind of going two different roads here. So I think for them, I'm going to go Tyler Booker here and improve the interior of the offensive line. As electric and as fun as it is to watch Kyler Murray running around, making the plays he does, I think if you can keep him more in structure and making him make those kinds of explosive plays more on his terms rather than him being forced to do it, if that makes sense, can only help him. James Conner is still their number one running back. He's kind of getting a little long in the tooth as well. So it makes sense both ways, right? Like you're making the life easier for both your quarterback and your running back. You got the receiver last year. I like Tyler Booker here.
Yeah, like good, solid guard. If Kyler's your guy going forward, got to protect him. So good move, good process, Dave. I agree with it. Now we go on to a team with perhaps questionable process. The Cincinnati Bengals.
Are they going to go
this
receiver
team
here?
Oh my gosh. Well, they just paid a lot of money to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to stay in town, and their defense is a disaster. Now, there were rumblings about Trey Hendrickson requesting a trade. Now I heard reports earlier today that now he might resign and wants to stay. So that would help them quite a bit. But the rest of their defense is still just an absolute mess, right? Like, this is a team that's terrible on the interior defensive line, minus BJ Hill, who's a pretty solid player. Their opposite edge, and Joseph Asai is an average player. Like, there is just so many holes on this defense. Cam Taylor-Britt is an okay corner. you have Dax Hill opposite, younger player drafted in 2022 who is solid, but again, like there's not a lot of stars here anymore. This has to be a defensive pick. You have to think, right? The other issue is their offensive line is pretty bad.
Yep.
Joe Burrow makes up for it by getting rid of the ball very quickly, right? But honestly, like, you know what this, and I said this when I was talking to Jake in one of our first casts, the way they're doing business right now reminds me of like the 2010 Green Bay Packers. It's, Joe, this is your show. It's on you, man. Figure it out. We'll give you the targets to throw the ball to, but we're not helping you on any other side of the ball. And I don't know if I agree with the process of how they're conducting things here, but I think you got to go defense. I know your offensive line's a mess, but your defense is, like, if you put up 35 points, it doesn't matter if teams are scoring 42 on you. You know what I mean? So defense wins championships. You gotta do something here defensively. Like, edge is a need for them. Interior D-line is a need for them. You could make the argument that you need a secondary player. What I think they do here, I think this is Mikael Williams for them. They need an edge opposite of Trey Hendrickson, even if they re-sign him. Williams is a guy that can play inside as well, if need be. He was really hampered by injury and still put up some really good tape. He really reminds me of Leonard Floyd, kind of the length. Really, he ran a 4.7, I believe. So this is a guy that can really move. I like the length, and he just needs to refine his pass rushing skill set and plan a little bit more. But once he gets to truly play on the edge, I really like him as a player, and having him and Trey Hendrickson should at least put you in a position where if you're in a shootout, now you can get after the passer a little bit at least. And this is a really good defensive tackle class. So for the Bengals, I think you're really hoping round 2 and 3, there's a defensive tackle on the board that you can take that gives you good depth. There's about 9 or 10 of them. So hopefully there's still one on the board there for you.
Yeah, I think this pick just makes a lot of sense with Sam Hubbard retiring, Trey Hendrickson halfway out the door. Maybe they can get a deal for him. Maybe they don't. But in either way, it's a need for you. And I think Mikael Williams just makes a whole lot of sense for Cincinnati. Moving on to the Seattle Seahawks, the team in our backyard. Funny that neither of us are fans of them, despite them being kind of the hometown team.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's kind of weird how that works out, right? So with the Seattle Seahawks, you brought in Sam Darnold on a contract that may look egregious at first look, given his Sam Darnold's body of work. But I'm also reading reports that no money is guaranteed after the first year.
Yeah.
So it would be pretty easy to cut ties with him if the experiment doesn't work out. But looking over the team, you brought in Cooper Kupp. You have Jackson Smith and Jigba. Noah Fant is still a very good tight end. You have Kenneth Walker. I think you really need to improve that offensive line. And I know that their GM's come out and said that he doesn't really value. I think he said guard, but to not value your offensive line, to say anything like that is just mind-boggling to me. And I'm going to hope that maybe this is just some kind of smoke screen and he was talking out of his butt. But we're going to stop the slide here, and we're going to go Kelvin Banks. He can start left tackle, he can start right tackle, he can start at guards, and those are all positions where Seattle needs to upgrade. And if you're going to have a QB that you're maybe not super sold on, otherwise you probably would have given him more guaranteed money, and your offense basically is going to run through Kenneth Walker, I think you need to improve that front five. You just need to.
The offensive line has been a problem for this franchise
for years.
It's got to be going on 10 years now that it's been a legitimate issue. It really seems
you remember
like
Russell Wilson like scooting around in the Super Bowls making plays, which, hey, good on him. That's what made him great. But you can't live your life that way, you know?
It kind of seems the second they made that Max Unger trade the offensive line was just a disaster from that point on for them. And Russell Wilson was very good. in spite of it, and they played great defense, so they were always successful. But that was probably a really big issue as to why they only won the one Super Bowl, minus the Patriots one, which they probably should have won if they just handed the ball off. But I digress. We won't try to hurt Seahawks fans too much or hurt your ego as a Patriots fan.
Patriots deserve that game. They deserved it.
Unbiased opinion. Hey, Dave.
I mean, how many helmet catches and these crazy... It's got to go your way one time, right?
Yeah, how about Chris Matthews in that game? Practice squad receiver elevated that year, who was a CFL star.
He was a CFL star. I knew he'd be able to do it.
Comes out of nowhere and has the game of his life in the Super Bowl. Pretty crazy, but
yeah.
Anyway, yeah, offensive line has been an issue for a while. Hopefully John Snyder finally bites the bullet and goes for one and finds one that works for them. I know my good friend Gord Randall, as a big Seahawks fan and former college offensive lineman, would really like that. So we'll see if they move in that direction. On to Tampa Bay, a team who really prioritizes the offensive line and has a very good offensive line. I really like what they did in free agency here, re-signing Chris Godwin, bringing in Hassan Reddick on the edge, who had an off year, was in that weird contract dispute. Maybe he can find his game again. This team, to me, really needs help at the safety position. Anton Winfield Jr. is starting to regress already. You don't have a lot of depth at that position. And there's a lot of, we haven't really taken any true safeties because Jahdae Barron's kind of a hybrid guy. There's some good safeties in this draft. I really like this safety class. And my favorite one, which might be a little bit of a bold pick here, has the same first name as me, Nick Amamori.
Not a homer pick at all, Nick.
From South Carolina. Cam Chancellor's kind of the comp that everyone is giving him. I don't think he's quite as physical as Cam Chancellor, but he reminds me of Cam in the way of how he moves at his size. This is a big, strong player who has fluid hips. He can play short area zones, but he's also adequately good at playing deep zones. He can play quarters. He can play in cover 2. I saw him multiple clips of getting interceptions on corner routes, which beats cover 2 if the corner doesn't execute the correct technique and sink, right? When you go smash with the hitch in a corner, right? So he has such fluid hips. He's a ball hawk. He's great after getting interceptions too. This guy had multiple pick sixes. He's dangerous with the ball in his hands after getting interceptions. He's so rangy. This guy's upside is incredible to me, and having a great defensive head coach like Todd Bowles will really solidify his game and I think take him to the next level.
Yeah, I'm not mad about that pick at all. I slept on Nick Imanwori before the combine, and then after he tested, I was like, okay, I got to be missing something. So I went back and watched the tape, and like you said, the way he moves shows up on film. He's very impressive. It doesn't shock me at all that you have him over Malachi Starks. I think he comes in and he, like we kind of said for Jalen Walker in the front 7 being that little chess piece, I think Nick Imanwori in the secondary is that chess piece that you can kind of move around anywhere. You can put him in the box. You can put him as a true center fielder and make plays on the ball. I really like the pick. Absolutely. He's a lot of fun.
He's a lot of fun to watch. Probably one of my favorite watches this year so far, behind Mike Green. Now we go on to Denver, who just signed a safety in Hufanga, who was a pretty big need for them. Say what you will about his game. I think he's fairly one-dimensional as a box safety, but nonetheless, they signed him. This is a team that was one game away from the playoffs. Rookie quarterback Bo Nix had quite the year. They're starting to build in the right direction under Sean Payton.
Yeah, so for them, I really like the moves that they've brought in. I like the Hufanga signing. I like the Dre Greenlaw. I think that they can kind of relax a little bit on defense, and I think they would like to keep building around Bo Nix and make his life a little easier. So for them, I have Emeka Ibuka, wide receiver out of Ohio State. They have Cortland Sutton, who's obviously your number 1. Marvin Mims hasn't really come into his own. Devon Vele was a feel-good kind of story, had some production last year. But I think if you bring in a guy like Ibuka, a good character guy who will block, just a football player, can make the tough catches that Bo Nix is going to eventually or inevitably make him have to make. I think Ibuka would be a Sean Payton kind of guy. You can obviously make the argument that Luther Burden is a more talented receiver. You can make the argument that Matthew Golden is the more explosive playmaking receiver. But if you just need a floor, solid, consistent receiver who can kind of do it all, I think Ibuka is the guy. Yeah, I like Ibuka here to the Broncos.
Yeah, he's a great fit with what Sean Payton does, and Payton will know how to utilize him and get him good looks in the slot. Yeah, this is a great fit for Denver. This is a guy that will make Bo Nix's life easier, and this is the type of receiver that a quarterback like Bo Nix really needs to excel at the next level. So this makes so much sense for Denver.
Yeah.
Now on to Pittsburgh. So Mason Rudolph is your best quarterback on your roster right now.
For now.
Now, does this sound eerily familiar to you? Pittsburgh holds on to their draft pick near the bottom half of the draft.
Don't do it.
With the quarterback on the board who people aren't sure of and they don't know if it's going to work. I'm not going to repeat history here because I learn from my mistakes. I'm not
Hopefully
a doctor, but
too.
I know this isn't Jackson Dart probably shouldn't go here, and this would be a decision that Pittsburgh regrets. I think there's other needs here. I think tackle opposite of Fantanu could possibly. I mean, I know you just picked Broderick Jones. He hasn't really been great for you. Maybe you give him another year. Corner's a problem. Joey Porter Jr. hasn't really panned out the way you've wanted him to. I really like Porter out of college, but he hasn't really been able to find himself. I think this is just the best player available. I think the other thing you need to look at is you have really good safety play. There's actually a couple good safeties still on the board here, but they don't really make sense. You just brought in Darius Slay. Man, this is actually a really tough choice. You just brought in DK Metcalf. Running back. You know what, actually, I'm going to do here? Jaylen Warren is a solid running back. I don't think he's the guy that you want to give 20 plus carries to a game, which Pittsburgh wants to kind of do with how they run their offense and with probably not great quarterback play coming to this team this year. Unless you get Aaron Rodgers, which could change things here, right? We don't know what's going to happen. But I think you go running back here because that's what this team wants to do. They want to run the ball. I'm going to Marion Hampton here out of North Carolina. This is a strong physical back, powers for extra yards. He has really great speed for his size. This guy just plays the running back position the way that Pittsburgh wants their backs to play. And I think with the situation, how they're going to have to play offense this year, I think this probably makes the most sense for them rather than reaching on a Jackson Dart at 21. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's who I had them going to. Jaylen Warren showed he can play running back. You signed Kenneth Gainwell, but he's not really the Steelers kind of guy, right? I think that with Arthur Smith, he could potentially play the Tajay Spears kind of third down receiving back type role, and that's great for him. I'm happy you have a role. But as for that number one running back, in the way the Steelers have always basically played the ball since the Jerome Bettis days, maybe even beyond that. I don't know. I think I was maybe 4 years old when that happened. I think Omarion Hampton fits, and I had him going here to the Steelers as well. So I think that's a great pick. And whoever your QB may be, anything to make his life easier, get him out of the way, honestly, is a good pick. And I really like Omarion Hampton already. I think he, in an older era of the NFL, I think he could end up being a top 15, top 10 pick. I really like.
Speaking of teams that like to run the football, The Los Angeles Chargers playing
Yeah.
Harbaugh ball. This is a team that in free agency perhaps didn't do enough to continually elevate their roster, looking to build through the draft process. You lost Josh Palmer. You need more
Oh
weapons for
no.
Justin Herbert. You have your franchise guy. Do you go with a weapon for Herbert here? What is your thought process here with them?
Yeah, the Chargers are really tough to pick for right now. You brought back Mike Williams, who's long in the tooth. We don't know what he's going to be. You have Quentin Johnston, who hasn't quite panned out, but you do have Lad McConkey. I feel like there's a lot of overlap between Quentin Johnston and Mike Williams as kind of just the true X kind of receivers. So they could definitely go for a weapon. I know that he wants to improve that Harbaugh, mind you, wants to improve the offensive line. You signed Mekhi Becton, great. Is the interior line still good enough? And you just cut Bosa, and you re-signed Khalil Mack. You brought him back. You signed Dante Jackson. These are they're okay players, but they're not long-term. I'm gonna bet my horse type players. So I'm really torn here between going kind of the edge interior D line and going interior O line receiver here. I'm gonna go a little crazy,
Oh,
and,
all right, all right.
and this might be a reach, but I kind of love it. I'm gonna go Elijah Arroyo, tight end out of Miami. I think he can really bring something to this offense. He's an okay blocker. He's a great move tight end, and it just gives that outlet for Justin Herbert, right? We're seeing tight ends climb up the board, like I said.
Yeah.
Um, and I think they really would have loved Loveland to drop down to this spot. And maybe this isn't the biggest need. Maybe he's not the best player on the board. But I think just what that offense needs right now, I think Arroyo is the pick. We saw him make a lot of plays with Cam Ward in Miami. And I wouldn't say that Cam Ward and Justin Herbert are dissimilar with their skill sets. I like this pick. I would like it a hell of a lot better in the second round. But I
Yeah.
kind of like this as like a sneaky shocker pick for the Harbaugh.
Yeah, I mean, look, there were still some good edges left on the board, but
Nah.
yeah, yeah, Mr. Quarterback, classic offensive mind pick there. I really like Arroyo's game. I'm really, really high on him. I loved his tape when I was watching Cam Ward, and even watching him on the broadcast. He was the guy that really stuck out to me. Kind of that like deceptively fast, kind of shifty route running tight end, more of like a power slot than an actual tight end, in my opinion. But I really like his game. I think he's going to be a great player. I think this might be a little bit too high on him, especially with the needs at edge. But hey, Dave, this is your pick. You're running the Chargers right now. I don't know how
I'm
they're going
gonna
to
own
feel
it.
about that one. But yeah, Elijah Arroyo at 22. Green Bay up here. Green Bay, big contract for Nate Hobbs, who's more of a nickel. He's a really good athlete. Good nickel. Jair Alexander, probably not a Packer. He wants out. He's kind of done. He doesn't want to wear green in the Green Bay uniform anymore. I wonder if he's wearing green today on St. Patty's Day. Probably not. He's probably sick of wearing it. So I think you need to go corner here because ideally you want Hobbs to play inside. There's a lot of good corners in this draft. So I think they got to go corner here. You have Amos on the board, Maxwell Hairston. You have Siobhan Revell, who is more of an upside guy. I'm going to go really off the board here, and I'm going to go Benjamin Morrison. There's a lot of concerns about the hip with him. And he's been really sliding down boards, and there's been So there's a couple things about Morrison that I hear people talk about. They talk about, oh, for a press corner, he doesn't have long enough arms. Well, if you watch the tape and understand DB play, what you'll see is he is a soft press corner. He is all about using his feet at the line of scrimmage, playing basketball defense, and then jamming and stabbing and turning and running once the receiver determines his release. He's not a guy that stabs you at the line and hits you at the line and disrupts your route, kind of like a Richard Sherman would. I know he's more of his own corner, but kind of that style with the long arms, right? He's a feet guy. He's excellent in off coverage. He's a ball hawk. This is a absolute superstar. And if teams are able to do physicals on him and they can feel good about this guy recovering and getting back to what he was, this is a can't miss here at 23 for Green Bay. Also with their scheme, they run a lot of man, a lot of press man. I think Azariah Thomas would also be a very good fit here for what they try to do. But I do think Benjamin Morrison is more of the complete player. And I think this guy's going to be an absolute stud if his hip is okay at the NFL level.
Well, we go from one reach pick to another reach pick.
2 reaches, bold picks.
We're in that part of the back end of the first round where we could start seeing that. No, I don't hate it, and especially after the whole Eric Stokes thing kind of didn't pan out.
Mm-hmm.
You're playing in a division with Minnesota, Detroit, Chicago, I guess. You need to load up on that on your secondary. I don't hate the Morrison pickup. Moving on to the Minnesota Vikings, a team that, I'll own this pick in our No Guarantees podcast. I thought they were going to absolutely tank, and I thought they'd be picking in the top 10. Boy, was I wrong.
Yeah.
I thought Sam Darnold was completely washed, but all of a sudden he had a resurgence in his career, in his life. And I knew they were going to be well coached, but I didn't think that coaching would elevate them that much. Darnold's obviously gone. You're looking at J.J. McCarthy as being your guy moving forward, unless they do bring in Aaron Rodgers, making the Brett Favre tour. So for this pick, I'm going to go Gray Zabel, tackle guard out of North
I
Dakota.
like that.
I've said this a lot, and a lot of it is just making that QB's life easier. You basically had a redshirt year for J.J. McCarthy. Aaron Jones is kind of he's been okay, and you brought in Jordan Mason too. So you have a good stable of running backs coming up. I think your best bet is to protect J.J. McCarthy and make his basically rookie season just a little more easy for him. We saw kind of Kirk Cousins struggle coming off of an injury that took him out of the year. So if you can just make J.J. McCarthy feel a little more safe, a little more confident, and a little more clean in that pocket, Zabel can play most positions on the offensive line. I think it's a really, really solid pick for them.
The definition of versatility on the offensive line, right? Yeah. I believe he played, I think, every position at South Dakota at some point. And this guy shows up at the Senior Bowl, and he is a dog. He's dominating in one-on-ones, which is a classically defensive drill in that aspect. When you go to receiver DBs, it's a different story. But anyway, to stay on track, really showcases his stuff, shows he belongs. Scouts love him. Just kind of a lunch pail, come to work, do your job, and just maul guys in the run game. Great in pass setting as well. I really like this guy. He's a guy that's climbing up draft boards, and for good reason. This is good value for Minnesota at 24. I really like that selection for them.
I got my draft back on the rails, boys.
There we go. After we made 2 terrible picks. I'll try to do the same thing here with the Texans. Houston, really questionable trading away Laramie Tunsil when your offensive line was awful and you have a young franchise quarterback who had a bad sophomore year. Yeah, I don't understand the process here. As a Jaguars fan, I kind of love it. I'm not going to lie, guys. But at the same time, I really like CJ Stroud, and I want to see him be successful. I think you have to go offensive line here to protect Stroud. Your right tackle situation not looking great right now. Blake Fisher, 2nd-round pick last year in the draft, and then you have Titus Howard opposite of him, who is a solid player, but not exactly what you want. I think you got to protect the franchise here. I like Josh Simmons. I know he got hurt, had very limited snaps this year. Prior to that, I really liked the film of what I saw with him. Coming off the injury, I think this guy, whenever he's ready to play, I heard he might miss most of camp and kind of be ready later. I like this guy. I think he's a good player. Once he's healthy, he'll be a day one starter for you, and he will help protect CJ Stroud so this team can be successful.
Yep, couldn't agree more. If you're going to completely, I don't even want to say revamp, but if you're going to empty the cupboard at offensive line, you got to get back that well and redevelop some players. And Josh Simmons is easily the best on the board, so I couldn't agree more. Moving on to our boy Sean Ball's team. I actually shot him a message asking, what do you think the Rams need in the draft? And the first thing he said was a quarterback. And I'm like, okay, you haven't done your draft prep. But then he, much more, I'm going to say coherently, said, actually, we really need a linebacker. So here I'm going to go Jahad Campbell. They haven't had that force in the middle since Ernest Jones left, and he left on kind of a bad terms, if I am remembering correctly. I think Jahad Campbell is a really good pick here for multiple reasons. I think he's really solid in the middle. I think he is a sneaky good player coming off the edge as well. And I think he's just a good leader that can come in and eventually be a captain in the middle of that defense.
Yeah, he has value off the edge too, right? He was kind of similar to Jalen Walker out of Georgia. Alabama runs a similar scheme, and he'd go outside on passing downs, and he gave tackles fits, not quite as well as his counterpart from Georgia, but pretty solid. Like, I liked what I saw there. He is excellent in coverage. He has really fluid hips. He diagnoses and reads routes well, and the best linebackers are kind of able to see the quarterback out of their peripheral while scanning and reading routes. He is able to do that, and you see it. It pops on film on multiple occasions on interceptions and pass breakups. This is a really good modern linebacker, and this is about where I think he should go. And the Rams, this defense looks really good for them. Jared Verse was a dog in year one. I think this guy's going to be a superstar. The power, speed he has off the edge, and flexibility. Braden Fisk was a great draft pick. This would be just another good pick for this defense, as the Rams kind of do a quick little retool on the fly, kind of, and continue to be a competitor.
Yeah.
Speaking of competitors, the Baltimore Ravens. A team that just hasn't quite been able to get over the hump and get into the Super Bowl with a top 3 quarterback in the league in Lamar Jackson. And this is a tough one, right? Like, I don't love Luther Burden here because I feel like Zay Flowers kind of has a similar skill set to him, but is a better player and has a higher ceiling. So I don't think you need 2 of them on your team. Matthew Golden has a vertical threat ability, sure, but I don't like him there for Baltimore. Edge, Tavian Robinson had a really good year for them. I think you gotta go. I think this is just a best player available kind of thing for them. And I think Mike Green slips in the draft a little bit because of what's going on, but we'll see kind of what happens with those allegations and everything. But I think if for whatever reason he's still on the board here, I think the Ravens take him. Like, this is a guy that, in my opinion, is one of the best players in this class. If you take everything else aside, he is so explosive off the edge. He's great against the run and so strong for his size. Really has vices as arms. He just locks out on tackles. In the pass game, the hip flexibility and his ability to get to the passer are pretty much unmatched other than Abdul Carter. I love this guy's game. And if he slides this far and they feel comfortable taking him, this guy's going to be an absolute stud for them for years to come.
Yeah, I remember when you posted your ranking your edge article, I think you had Mike Green number 1. you're very high on his game, and I have no reason to disagree with you. I think this is a great steal for them. Off-field issues aside, you bring him in, and if you're looking at the teams that are knocking you out of the playoffs every year, it's the Chiefs, it's the Bills even that you're going to be competing with, right? You got to be able to find a way to disrupt their passing attacks, and Mike Green's a great pick for that.
3-down player, disruptor, just such a stud. Speaking of studs, the Detroit Lions have quite a few of them. Hey, a team that was able to have
now.
Yeah, that's true. But this is a team that was just decimated by injury under Dan Campbell, really rallied. And I know, obviously, the upset loss to the Commanders in the playoffs was pretty shocking, but the fact that they even competed in that game with the amount of injuries they had was just pretty crazy. This is a team with a really bright future. I know they lost some pieces, but if they have a good draft, this is a team that's right back up there in contention.
Yep, I would agree. And for that reason, that's going to inform my next pick. And this is a bit of a homer pick for me, I suppose, but I think that it's not too far off of the value. I'm going to go Donovan Ezeraku, edge out of Boston College. I think with the injuries to Aiden Hutchinson last year, you brought in Marcus Davenport to play across from him. He's never really been that productive with New Orleans, and we know that Dan Campbell wants to play this or in the history of Detroit since coming in, he wants to play that downhill aggressive kind of defense, and I think Ezeraku just fits. I mean, at worst, he maybe sits a little bit behind Davenport, but I think very quickly he ends up taking over that role. And to have both him and Aiden Hutchinson coming off the edge is just such a dangerous combo. I really like Ezeraku's game. He's coming up the boards a little bit too to be like kind of this is probably about where most teams are, or most mock drafts and experts are having him picked. I love the kid. I think he's just a high motor player, makes disruptions in the backfield, and is going to be a great second edge to Hutchinson.
Yeah, this is a guy that was just born to rush the passer, right?
Yeah.
Like his comp for me is Yannick Ngakoue. Just hand usage is elite already. The problem with him is I don't think he's a plus athlete, so I don't think the ceiling is very high. But this range is exactly where I think he should go, because from day one, he is going to be a good pass rusher for you. I don't know how much he's going to elevate his game. I don't know how helpful he's going to be on rundowns with his lack of explosion and power, but this guy is going to be a nuisance on second and longs and third and longs for his whole career. And if you look at, I think his ceiling is like prime Ngakoue, and I think it'll last longer, like Jaguars Ngakoue. But this is a guy that can get after the passer and constantly be disruptive. He has the best rush plan in this class. He constantly sets up his moves and just makes tackles life's misery. He's fun to watch too. Other than Mike Green and Carter, I think he was my favorite edge to watch. I think I had him at the number 5 range. But yeah, this guy's going to help a contender right from the get-go. This is a really good pick for them, and this will help them. I love him opposite Hutchinson. I think they'll offset each other really well. Now, the team that beat the Detroit Lions in a shocking underdog upset, love me some underdog wins, the Washington Commanders. They were full of those underdog last second Hail Mary kind of movie type victories last year, which was just crazy to watch. Jaden Daniels looked really good in year one with Cliff Kingsbury as his offensive coordinator. So this team has been active in free agency, making the Laramie Tunsil trade, Deebo Samuel trade. Yeah, like there are some needs here. I think the edge is one of them. I also think inside backer is a really big need for them. Bobby Wagner is not what he used to be. He looked very slow, especially in that playoff game. I know PFF gives him a really high grade. That would be one that I would kind of disagree with quite a bit. I think if you watch the film, I think it paints a different picture. very smart player, great leader, obviously, but I think at most he has 2 years left, probably. He's really on his last legs. This is not the Bobby from 2015. So that's a big need for them that really showed up against the Eagles. They just gave Kinlaw a big deal to play inside. They have Newton, the rookie from last year from Illinois, who I really like. So I think you gotta go edge here. I really do. And I'm not a massive fan of his game, to be completely honest with you. I think he's very one dimensional and has a long way to go, but I think they go James Pierce here to solidify the edge on the other side of the ball. My issue with Pierce is his first step is second to none. It's him and Carter with best first step in this class. Mike Green just a tier below. My problem is he doesn't have a natural instinct when to cut back inside, which people you can say, oh, they can learn how to do that. There's an instinct that comes to pass rushers that the best of the best has, and I don't know if Pierce has it. Regardless, freak athlete. If he can learn, have a better rush plan. If you gave this guy Azaraku's rush plan, this guy would be a top 5 pick, like 100%, right? So I think there's a lot to develop there. I know there's been some character concerns with him as well, allegedly. Take that off. Like, I think this is the right spot for him. And I think with the proper guidance, and if he can get a really good defensive line coach to kind of instill those really important technical habits and not getting too deep and everything like that, while he's rushing the passer, I think he can develop into a really good player. I think this is probably the right spot for him, and I think he'll really help Washington move forward as they try to continue to contend.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And when you're doing well with your free agent signings, as Washington is, you kind of lends you to be able to take a bit of a risk player in James Pierce, right? They do still have needs on that edge. I mean, who's going to be their starting edge right now? It's going to be Dietrich Wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of taking he's a little long in the tooth, and we're seeing him regress being a New England fan to role player for them. But I think James Pierce is a great pick there. You're playing in a division with the Super Bowl champion, so you really need to elevate that defense and elevate that pass rush. I like the pick there as well. Hey, moving on to the Buffalo Bills. I love the Buffalo Bills. They're probably my favorite team. We're going to go down the board here, and we're actually going to take linebacker Teddy Buchanan out of California. No, we're not. No, we're not.
I was about to go. Oh, come on, man! All right, that would have been the biggest homer pick of all time.
I actually just scrolled down and picked a random name, but it just so happened to be a California boy. No, for them, I really like what they've done in the offseason, or in the free agency, mind you, bringing in Joshua Palmer. I still think they could use another playmaker at receiver, and I'm really bouncing around the idea of Matthew Golden. Maybe if they didn't sign Palmer, Golden would be the pick here for me, absolutely. And I really like what they've done on defense. You know, you bring in Joey Bosa, you bring in Michael Hecht, you gotta mess up the Chiefs' offensive line. We saw how that works out for them. But I'm going to go a little bit different here, and I'm going to stop the slide. I'm going to go Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. I think you have kind of middling safeties at this point. Taylor Rapp's fine. I think he's better down Cole in the box. I think Cole Bishop is fine. Malachi Starks can kind of play anywhere. He's kind of a chess piece in the back end there. You can move him into the nickel. He can play free safety. And I think he's just a good, solid Georgia player who can come in and make your defense better.
Agreed. Yeah, he can play anywhere in the secondary. He played in a very complicated scheme at Georgia. He can play so many different techniques. The one thing with him, there's no question he's going to be a good player. I just don't know how high the ceiling is with him because I don't think he is a elite athlete, right? That's kind of the knock on him. He's a very good athlete, but I don't know if he's an NFL elite athlete. So I think that's kind of the knock on him. But I have no doubt he, at worst, will be a good player in the NFL. And for a team like the Bills, with a head coach, Sean McDermott, who's a defensive-minded coach that really gets the most out of his safeties, like we talked about Damar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp, they were pretty good last year.
Sure.
for what they are,
For what
right?
they are.
He
Yeah,
got the
fine.
most out of those guys 100%. If you give someone with Malachi Starks' skill set to McDermott, that you're looking pretty good. I think that's a really good place for him to be, and I think he'll really thrive under McDermott. So I think that's a really good move for them. Now to Kansas City, everybody's favorite team in the world. I think we kind of know the issue with this team, right? We saw it in the Super Bowl, offensive line. Now they went out, they lose Joe Tooney, and they kind of utilize that money to go tackle, right? So to me, with bringing in Jalen Moore there to play tackle for them, say what you will about that move, Moore's pretty solid. Like, he's not a star by any means, but good player. They want to protect Mahomes' blind side. There is a huge hole at left guard right now. Massive. And, you know, you have the best quarterback in the league. You probably don't want him on his back 90% of the time. This is a tough pick because I don't know if you want to pick an O-line at this spot. So if I'm Kansas City here, just because of how the board has played out, I don't think you go O-line. I think you probably trade down if you're the Chiefs in this position, but we're not doing that. What I'm going to do is this Chiefs receiving core really does not have it for me. I like Hollywood Brown, but I think he's a really good 2. He's not a 1. I think Xavier Worthy is a very one-dimensional deep threat. Travis Kelce is really getting long in the tooth. He did not look like himself for most of last year.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to go Matthew Golden.
I don't hate it.
Another kind of vertical threat receiver, but I think he is much more well-rounded than a Worthy is, for instance. Obviously, they went to the same school. I like Golden's game. I think this is a very helpful target for Mahomes working different parts of the field, and this is someone they need. And then I think if they don't trade down in the second round, you got to find a way maybe to trade up to get a guard or maybe one kind of slides to you, but you gotta solidify that left guard spot. That's a big deal. But I also think he needs some more help in the receiving game. I don't think they have the receiving core right now to really put him in the most successful position and for him not to just play hero ball.
No, and I would say that with Matthew Golden, Xavier Worthy, and Hollywood Brown, that's a lot of speed to be covering. And with the cute little ways that we've seen Andy Reid's offense be able to get these guys the ball in weird ways and with weird screen type things, you can't cover all 3 of them.
Yeah,
I like it.
more weapons, the better for him. And now the Super Bowl champions, Dave.
Super
A
Bowl
team that
champions.
has a team that has drafted so well, they're always able to promote within. Kind of what employers always want to do and lie to you about doing in the real world, but they've made it a reality here, and they are able to lose pieces like Darius Slay because they draft so well. Now you have Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell waiting. I mean, they started last year, obviously, but you have guys to just push up the lineup because you draft so well. Howie Roseman and company do such a good job for this franchise, laying down the building blocks for years to come, that they don't have to go out and sign big name free agents if they don't want to. They're just in such a good position as a franchise. They've drafted so well. How do they continue that with this pick, Dave?
It's really tough because there's no Georgia guys really left on the board for them to pick. And I'm kind of torn here, and I was prepping for this pick as you were making the Chiefs one, and I'm going back and forth between a couple players here, but I think what I want to do just for the value on the board, I think I'm gonna go Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss.
I like it.
You lost
Milton
Williams, who
Yeah.
obviously went to the Patriots. You also lost Josh Sweat, so I was kind of juggling between him and Nick Skirton. I always want to say Scourton. But I think here, Nolan's a very good pick. I think he fits what Williams left behind. I think he probably could have gone much higher as well. So I think this it's a slide for him to end up this far down, and a good pick for them to get that defensive front line disruptive again.
I like it. I really like his game. I know there's been some conversations about maturity with him, but if you're in the right room, that can easily get fixed, right? You just need the right people around you pushing you in the right direction. And what better franchise to do it than the Eagles? They kind of do it the right way. They have a veteran staff. You'd be working under Vic Fangio, a veteran defensive coordinator who's seen it all. I think he could really blossom there. This guy's physical upside is pretty crazy. A guy that big should not move like that. So I really like him as a prospect, and I think if he figures things out on his own, he's going to be quite the player in the NFL. So there's our first mock draft, guys. I think we were pretty logical for the most part. I think maybe there were a couple picks in there at 22 and 23 that might be slightly questionable. It might get ripped a little bit, but hey, whatever. I like making the bold takes from now.
Hey, I mean, the NFL draft has these picks, right? Like,
yeah,
you never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, where's our Darius Hayward Bay pick? Didn't have that coming.
No.
Where's our Daniel Jones?
I mean, I thought you were gonna go there with Pittsburgh, but
I teased it, but
you teased it.
I teased it. I just don't think that's going to happen again. But anyway, guys, let us know what you think. Where you think your favorite team, who they should pick, where your favorite prospects should go, anything you agree with or disagree with. Let us know. Thank you for joining us on the Film Grinders podcast, and we will see you guys next time. Thank you for listening to the Film Grinders podcast. Make sure to follow us on all your favorite podcast platforms. From me and the guys, thank you. We'll see you next time.